I'm exploring my 5 favorite Ben Franklin ideas in 5 different videos. This is number 3 out of 5. In this video, I'm exploring the idea of having many interests. Is it a good thing to have many interests? Is it possible to be successful while having many interests and endeavors and projects? Or does success depend on having fewer projects or even focusing on one project? Personally, I've been making myself feel guilty for having many interests, and I always wish I could reduce it to a smaller number. Ben Franklin had many interests. Over the course of his life, he was known as a diplomat, a professional writer, a professional printer, a scientist in the field of electricity, and many more things. All this in addition to perhaps what he's most known for, being one of the founding fathers of the United States of America and signing the Declaration of Independence. And for him, having many interests did not seem to be a problem. To illustrate this, I will read some of my favorite passages from 4 extremely different pieces of writing. The Morals of Chess, Advice on Choosing a Mistress, Fart Proudly, and Experiments and Observations on Electricity. Selected text from The Morals of Chess. The game of chess is not merely an idle amusement. Several very valuable qualities of the mind, useful in the course of human life, are to be acquired or strengthened by it, so as to become habits, ready on all occasions. For life is a kind of chess, in which we have often points to gain and competitors or adversaries to contend with, and in which there is a vast variety of good and ill events that are in some degree the effects of prudence or the want of it. By playing at chess, then, we may learn 1. Foresight, which looks a little into the future and considers the consequences that may attend an action. For it is continually occurring to the player, if I move this piece, what will be the advantages or disadvantages of my new situation? What use can my adversary make of it to annoy me? What other moves can I make to support it and to defend myself from his attacks? 2. Circumspection, which surveys the whole chessboard or scene of action, the relations of the several pieces and situations, the dangers they are respectively exposed to, the several possibilities of their aiding each other, the probabilities that the adversary may make this or that move, and attack this or the other piece, and what different means can be used to avoid his stroke or turn its consequences against him. 3. Caution, not to make our moves too hastily. This habit is best acquired by observing strictly the laws of the game, such as, if you touch a piece, you must move it somewhere. If you set it down, you must let it stand. And it is therefore best that these rules should be observed, as the game becomes thereby more the image of human life, and particularly of war, in which, if you have incautiously put yourself into a bad and dangerous position, you cannot obtain your enemy's leave to withdraw your troops and place them more securely, but you must abide all the consequences of your rashness. And lastly, we learn by chess the habit of not being discouraged by present bad appearances in the state of our affairs, the habit of hoping for a favorable change, and that of persevering in the search of resources. The game is so full of events, there is such a variety of turns in it, the fortune of it is so subject to sudden vicissitudes, and one so frequently, after long contemplation, discovers the means of extricating oneself from a supposed insurmountable difficulty, that one is encouraged to continue the contest to the last, in hopes of victory by our own skill, or at least by giving a stalemate by the negligence of our adversary. Selected text from Advice to a Friend on Choosing a Mistress. My dear friend, I know of no medicine fit to diminish the violent natural inclinations you mention. And if I did, I think I should not communicate it to you. Marriage is the proper remedy. It is the most natural state of man, and therefore the state in which you are most likely to find solid happiness. Your reasons against entering into it at present appear to me not well founded. The circumstantial advantages you have in view by postponing it are not only uncertain, but they are small in comparison with that of the thing itself, the being married and settled. It is the man and woman united that make the complete human being. Separate, she lacks his force of body and strength of reason. He, her softness, sensibility, and acute discernment. Together they are more likely to succeed in the world. A single man has not nearly the value he would have in that state of union. He is an incomplete animal. He resembles the odd half of a pair of scissors. If you get a prudent, healthy wife, your industry in your profession, in her good economy, will be a fortune sufficient. If you will not take this counsel, and persist in thinking a commerce with the sex inevitable, then I repeat my former advice, that in all your amours you should prefer old women to young ones. You call this a paradox and demand my reasons. They are these. 1. Because as they have more knowledge of the world, and their minds are better stored with observations, their conversation is more improving and more lastingly agreeable. 2. Because when women cease to be handsome, they study to be good. To maintain their influence over men, they supply the diminution of beauty by an augmentation of utility. They learn to do 1,000 services, small and great, and are the most tender and useful of all friends when you are sick. Thus they continue amiable, and hence there is hardly such a thing to be found as an old woman who is not a good woman. 3. Because there is no hazard of children, which, irregularly produced, may be attended with much inconvenience. 4. They are more prudent and discreet in conducting an intrigue to prevent suspicion. The commerce with them is therefore safer with regard to your reputation. And with regard to theirs, if the affair should happen to be known, considerate people might be rather inclined to excuse an old woman who would kindly take care of a young man, form his manners by her good counsels, and prevent his ruining his health and fortune among mercenary prostitutes. 5. Because in every animal that walks upright, the deficiency of the fluids that fill the muscles appears first in the highest part. The face first grows lank and wrinkled, then the neck, then the breast and arms, the lower parts continuing to the last as plump as ever. So that covering all above with a basket and regarding only what is below the girdle, it is impossible of two women to know an old from a young one. And as in the dark all cats are grey, the pleasure of corporal enjoyment with an old woman is at least equal and frequently superior, every knack being by practice capable of improvement. 6. Because the sin is less. The debauching of a virgin may be her ruin, and make her for life unhappy. 7. Because the compunction is less. The having made a young girl miserable may give you frequent bitter reflections, none of which can attend the making of an old woman happy. 8th and lastly, they are so grateful. Thus much for my paradox, but still I advise you to marry directly, being sincerely your affectionate friend. Selected text from Fart Proudly. It is universally well known that in digesting our common food, there is created or produced in the bowels of human creatures the great quantity of wind. That the permitting this air to escape and mix with the atmosphere is usually offensive to the company, from the fetid smell that accompanies it. It is universally well known that all well-bred people, therefore, to avoid giving such offense, forcibly restrain the efforts of nature to discharge that wind. That so retained, contrary to nature, it not only gives frequently great present pain, but occasions future diseases such as habitual colics, ruptures, tympanies, etc., often destructive of the constitution and sometimes of life itself. Were it not for the odiously offensive smell accompanying such escapes, polite people would probably be under no more restraint in discharging such wind in company than they are in spitting or in blowing their noses. My prize question therefore would be, to discover some drug, wholesome or not disagreeable, to be mixed with our common food or sauces that shall render the natural discharges of wind from our bodies not only inoffensive but agreeable as perfumes. That this is not a chimerical project and altogether impossible may appear from these considerations. That we already have some knowledge of means capable of varying that smell. He that dines on stale flesh, especially with much addition of onions, shall be able to afford a stink that no company can tolerate, while he that has lived for some time on vegetables only shall have that breath so pure as to be insensible to the most delicate noses. And if he can manage so as to avoid the report, he may anywhere give vent to his griefs unnoticed. But as there are many to whom an entire vegetable diet would be inconvenient, and as a little quick lime thrown into a jakes will correct the amazing quantity of fetid air arising from the vast mass of putrid matter contained in such places, and render it rather pleasing to the smell, who knows but that a little powder of lime, or some other thing equivalent, taken in our food, or perhaps a glass of lime water drank at dinner, may have the same effect on the air produced in and issuing from our bowels. This is worth the experiment. Certain it is also that we have the power of changing by slight means the smell of another discharge, that of our water. A few stems of asparagus eaten shall give our urine a disagreeable odour, and a pill of turpentine no bigger than a pea shall bestow on it the pleasing smell of violets. And why should it be thought more impossible in nature to find means of making a perfume of our wind than of our water? Selected text from Experiments and Observations on Electricity made at Philadelphia in America. 1. Non-electric bodies that have electric fire thrown into them will retain it till other non-electrics that have less approach. And then it is communicated by a snap and becomes equally divided. 2. Electrical fire loves water, is strongly attracted by it, and they can subsist together. 3. Air is an electric per se, and when dry will not conduct the electrical fire. It will neither receive it nor give it to other bodies. Otherwise, no body surrounded by air could be electrified positively and negatively. For should it be attempted positively, the air would immediately take away the overplus, or negatively, the air would supply what was wanting. 4. Water being electrified, the vapors arising from it will be equally electrified, and floating in the air, in the forms of clouds or otherwise, will retain that quantity of electrical fire till they meet with other clouds or bodies not so much electrified, and then will communicate as before mentioned. 5. Every particle of matter electrified is repelled by every other particle equally electrified. Thus, the stream of a fountain, naturally dense and continual, when electrified, will separate and spread in the form of a brush, every drop endeavoring to recede from every other drop. But on taking out the electrical fire, they close again. 6. Water, being strongly electrified, rises in vapors more copiously, the attraction of cohesion among its particles being greatly weakened by the opposite power of repulsion introduced with the electrical fire. And when any particle is by any means disengaged, it is immediately repelled and so flies into the air. 8. Friction between non-electric and electric per se will produce electrical fire, not by creating, but collecting it, for it is equally diffused in our walls, floors, earth, and the whole mass of common matter. Thus, the whirling glass globe during its friction against the cushion draws fire from the cushion. The cushion is supplied from the frame of the machine, that from the floor on which it stands. Cut off the communication by thick glass or wax placed under the cushion, and no fire can be produced, because it cannot be collected. 9. The ocean is a compound of water, a non-electric, and salt, an electric, per se. I've been feeling bad about it for years, until I see Ben Franklin, who had many interests and was successful in them all. And it makes me think maybe it's okay to explore many things at the same time. Or I could make them all one thing and find and understand the connection between them all.